I trained my husband into believing that, his happiness was my priority. So the minute that he's happy and he was unhappy, it was my responsibility to fix it. And he would make that very clear. Like, I'm not happy with this. Do something about it, regardless of whether it was a situation that I was actually even involved in. So that's where I was. And then it just got to a point, like you said, where I hit rock bottom. I was absolutely miserable. I would, lie awake crying at night, or I would lie awake at night planning my divorce. I was like, this is all his fault.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Flip That Shit. My name is Stacey Uhrig. I'm your host. And today we are joined by Tanya Biddle. She's coming to us from Australia, which is so cool. It's 7:00 at night here on a Thursday night. What time is it over there, Tanya?
It's Friday morning, 10 a.m.
It's Friday morning, 10. And it's probably kind of getting warm in summer by you. Yes?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful, warm day today.
Not so much here in New Jersey. It's a beautiful day, but not so warm. But I want to tell you guys about Tanya. Here's her story. Boy meets girl. Girl puts boy on pedestal. Boy and girl have 3 beautiful children. Girl makes herself the lowest priority in the home. She loses herself and her power. She hits a crisis, hits rock bottom, grows a set of balls, asks for what she needs. Girl fights against internal and external resistance, becomes a coach to help other women in her position. Rock girl happens to be Tanya Biddle. So welcome, Tanya.
Thank you very much.
I love the way that you shared that. So tell us about your story. This platform is all about sharing a story of struggle and finding the gift in the challenge. So what was yours?
So, long story short, I think when we first met up and had a chat about, me being a guest on your podcast, which I am absolutely, truly grateful for, I must say. One of the things that I shared with you then was that the situation that I ended up in really started when I was a child. So, without, throwing anybody under the bus too much, my dad was a very angry man. He was very verbally abusive, and that was my childhood. I learned at a very early age that you do whatever you need to do to make sure that the man in the house is happy, because when the man in the house isn't happy, then shit gets scary. But not realizing that, that's what I took into my marriage, my relationship. My husband and I met when I was 18. I'm 51 now, so we've been together for a very long time. And so for me, making him happy was my highest priority. That was, ingrained in me. That's what I needed to do. Making him happy was really super important. And it wasn't just him. It was realistically any man that I came in contact with. I was very conscious of the fact that if I said no, or if I didn't want to do what they wanted to do, and I'm not suggesting that I would ever put myself in serious danger, but there was always that little itch at the back of my mind saying, you don't want to make this guy unhappy. You don't want to make him mad. And so that was it. That was my life. That was the way that I operated. That was my standard operating procedure, was to make this man happy. And then when my kids came along, it was the same. It was that plus a combination of needing to prove to everyone that I was an amazing mum. And in order to do that, I needed to suffer and sacrifice for everyone else, because that's what being a good mum was all about. It's all about going without and, making sure that your kids and your husband have everything that they want, that their needs are always being met. And of course, then that leads to not having the belief that you are worthy of that kind of, you're not worthy of having your needs put first, and feeling guilty and feeling selfish when you do. and also being told that you're selfish when you do. And so I was in that spiral for a very, very long time. And like you said, it got to the stage where there was that victim mindset there. There was that, that resentment crept in where, I resented even my children who, I worship the ground that they walk on. But I resented them for this one-way street that I had created. But at that time, I wasn't aware that I had created that. I had taught my husband and I had taught my children that I was the lowest priority, and that was all that they knew. But I was, of the opinion that, it should be a two-way street. So if I'm sacrificing and suffering for you and making your needs and your happiness a priority, then that's what you should be doing for me. And of course, that's complete bullshit. Like, your happiness is your own responsibility. But unfortunately, I trained my husband into believing that, his happiness was my priority. So the minute that he's happy and he was unhappy, it was my responsibility to fix it. And he would make that very clear. Like, I'm not happy with this. Do something about it, regardless of whether it was a situation that I was actually even involved in. So that's where I was. And then it just got to a point, like you said, where I hit rock bottom. I was absolutely miserable. I would, lie awake crying at night, or I would lie awake at night planning my divorce. I was like, this is all his fault. Like, I'm miserable and this is all his fault because he's not making my needs a priority. He's not setting a good example for the kids so that they're making my needs a priority. And so, I just got to the stage where I was like, I would much rather be alone. I just want to be alone, just so that I can look after myself and I don't have to ask permission and I don't have to go without. And it wasn't until I engaged a life coach of my own, and I was a pretty slow learner. Like, I was really deeply embedded in the whole everything's his fault. And she said, you do realize that you chose to make his happiness your priority? And it was like someone switched on the lights. I was like, oh, shit, that's right. Like, at no point did we sit down and have a conversation whereby he said, my happiness is your only priority. Are we clear on that? That was something that I did. That was the behavior that I created that he followed along with.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you do with that information?
That was a real aha moment. My mind was blown. And at that point, I sat down with him and I said, your happiness is no longer my responsibility.
Yeah.
And of course, on the outside, he's like, no, of course it's not. Like, that's fine. Like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, if you're unhappy with something, you need to sort it out. Like, if it's something that I've done, okay, we'll discuss it. But if it's outside of, that's not my shit to deal with. That's yours. And the kids need to be taught that, their happiness is their priority. They need to look after that. And there are things that I want to do for myself. I'm not happy with my teeth. I want to get braces. I want to be a life coach. So that involves study, that involves time, that involves money. And on the top of my bucket list is a 3-week trip to Italy with my girlfriend. I don't want you coming. You and kids aren't invited. So it was voicing those needs and those desires. And it's like, the housewife, mother, taxi, nucleus of the family is not all I want to be anymore. I want more than that.
And how is that received?
Shit, to be perfectly honest with you, because then, it's the realization that, oh, hang on, I'm going to have to do more around the house than what I do now. Like, for him.
Well, basically making everybody's life a little bit less convenient, right?
Yeah, that is exactly right.
Bowing to what it is that they want and making their life the priority. Yeah. So how did you get past that shitstorm?
It was just courage. Every day, having the courage to keep fighting for what I wanted and what I needed. at the time, there was still a lot of anger and resentment there at the time. So at the time, it was, I struggled with the aggressive versus assertive kind of, I would say, this is what I want. So, for example, the trip to Italy, I'm like, this is what I want. And he was like, okay, so we're obviously going down separate paths. Do you need to move out? And I'm like, yeah, fine. I'm fucking going. I'll take the kids with me. I'm still going to Italy though. But, so I struggled with that, finding the right words to reassure him that this doesn't mean I don't love you. And this doesn't mean that I don't love the kids and don't want to be there for them, but my needs are important too. So it was definitely lots of courage and lots of determination. And it, for me, like you said, because I was at rock bottom, it just got to the point where if I considered giving in and backing down, that terrified me more than facing the resistance of you're being selfish and this is not what being married is all about.
I have so many questions about this, and I'm so glad we're doing this podcast today because I hear this. I coach women who are in this, where a lot of the dysfunction and the pushback that they have in their life is the fact that they are walking into their true authentic self. They're kind of re-becoming. I don't like the term unbecoming because they became to be who they were.
Yeah.
Okay. They're going back to the original here.
Yeah.
There's a little misnomer and it's a little mistake in that saying, right? Because people say, oh, she's unbecoming. She's not unbecoming. She's going back home.
Yeah.
Right? To the original. What happens is I love the saying, we shed pieces of ourselves when we're very, very young. And you talked about the fact that you had a dysfunctional household. We shed pieces of ourselves at a very, very, very young age, sometimes before we're even 2 or 3 years old, to meet the other needs of people so our needs will be met.
Yep.
So as you were describing, the household mantra was, don't bother dad, keep things peaceful, keep the waters calm. If we do that, we'll all live a happier life.
Yep.
Right. And so what does that mean? That means that if you have joy and excitement and you want to share something, or you're sad and frustrated and you want to share that, the answer is no, because that could make that person upset and we don't want to rough the water. So we shed a little piece of that. We have no place to put it. We just let it go. And by the way, we learned that works.
Yep.
And the reason why we do it is really not in theory to make that other person happy. It's to keep us safe.
Yeah.
Right? Every single thing that we do when it's not working for us, every single coping mechanism that's, say, maladaptive is designed to keep us alive. So even if your mom's saying, listen, we can all see dad gets really upset and that looks like X, before you're 8 years old, your rational brain is not developed. So you're not able to intellectually rationalize like, oh, it shouldn't make him upset if I show up happy. Now we're just assuming everything is going to be combustible.
Yeah.
So you learn, don't make men angry. Making men angry is someone else's fault.
Yeah.
They're not angry on their own. That's not what they're being told. You're not being told he's going to come home angry. You're being told, don't make him angry when he gets home.
Yeah.
He's already pissed when he's walking in the door. We just don't want to light the fire to the bomb.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not what the young child understands. If I show up this way, then I am doing good. But what we're doing is we're shedding that authentic piece.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So then as you go further and you find it happening, extreme people pleasing, no lack of boundaries, putting everybody, deprioritization, putting everybody's priorities ahead of yours to a fault, to burnout. And then when you say, I'm done with this shit, everybody goes, whoa, 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 pump the brakes, woman.
Yeah.
We married Tanya 1.0.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in Tanya 2.0. Right?
Yep.
And it reminds me a lot. I'm pointing back behind me for people that can't see it. I have this tower of books. It reminds me of Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
Yep.
Did you read this book?
Yep.
Okay. So for people who have not read or heard of Brene Brown, which if you have not heard of Brene Brown, you may be under a rock at this point. But if you have not, she is a specialist in the areas of shame and vulnerability. And vulnerability is simply courage on steroids, right? And so she writes this book called Daring Greatly, which is exactly Tanya's story. I'm miserable. I'm showing up in all these different ways. I'm wearing all these different pieces of armor so people won't see me because I've been taught that my worthiness is low. Because I'm not allowed to show up as myself.
Yeah.
And then you realize, usually mid 30s, 40s, 50s, I would say mid 40s, that that's utter bullshit and we're miserable. And I want to reattach back to my authentic self. Enter in Tanya 2.0. And now you have to deal with the reckoning and the rumble, which, by the way, is her the book after this one, which is called Rising Strong. Because the whole idea is when we finally own our truths and our authentic self, it's great for us. But sometimes people around us are not going to be so thrilled.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you take all of this. Do you go to Italy?
Yeah.
And is it amazing?
Yeah.
And do you have any guilt about it?
No.
Amazing. And you come back and they've lived and survived without you.
Yep.
Does that shift things for you?
Not for me so much. For me, when I like the actual experience of being in Italy was I did it. Like I did this, I went over, I planned the trip pretty much all by myself, and it was, the wheels fell off a couple of occasions, but I did this. I did this major thing just for me. And when I got home, it like, I don't think I actually voiced it, but in my head, I was like, see, everybody's still alive. Like nothing has changed. I actually came home. I think one of his fears, rational or otherwise, was if she goes, she's not coming back. So that was the thought in the back of my mind was, one, I haven't financially fucked over the family by going on this holiday for 3 weeks with my girlfriend. The bills still got paid. Nobody went without. No one ever goes without. And I came home. So like it didn't destroy anything. So that was what was going on for me.
I'm quite sure people who are listening want to know if you're still with your husband.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Because again, if someone's listening, the whole point of this podcast is your story is someone's story. Yeah. It has its own nuances, but so many people struggle with this. And I remember when you and I first spoke, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Because how many women specifically, are martyrs, deprioritize themselves, put themselves on the bottom rung of the ladder in life, but are pissed, resentful, and angry, and stuck, super miserable, super depressed. But yet when they see everybody else's life on Instagram and social media, it looks so beautiful and perfect. Now they start to feel worse about themselves.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're alone and isolated and the only one.
Yeah.
So let's just hope someone's listening to this and says, holy shit, this is my story. I'm not alone. Yeah. And they're going to want to know, well, what happened? How did you go from angry, resentful victim where everybody's like, what are you doing? And you're like, back up because I'm coming and I'm not going back. How do you get to where you are now?
Look, I'm going to be brutally honest and say that almost every day is still a battle. It still is a battle. When you are in that pattern, that habit of behavior for such a very long time, it doesn't reverse itself overnight. So I sort of feel myself in the situation that I'm in at the moment, that the amount of time it took me to get into that bad place, it's probably going to take me 2 or 3 times as long to get out of it, because that habit is so deeply ingrained, not just in my husband, but in me as well. Because when I was...
What the habits are?
Yeah, so when I was facing that resistance where I was putting myself last and sacrificing for everyone else, you know, when I did step out of my box, I felt guilty and I felt selfish. And so when my husband was telling me that I was being self-centered and selfish, he was like basically mirroring exactly what was going on in my head. He was just verbalizing that. So the battle is not just, you know, fighting that resistance on the outside, it's fighting the resistance on the inside, because the people around, well, the people around me were telling me exactly the same thing that was going on in my head. So for me today, it's still an everyday thing. I think on the outset, my husband realizes that his happiness is his responsibility, but I am much further down the personal development track than he is. It's not something that he has ever done.
He didn't need to.
He didn't need to, because I was taking care of everything. That's exactly right. So, like, I've been working on myself for the last 10 years, realistically, maybe a little bit longer than that. And he's only just starting now. And so it's getting to a point now where he's starting to struggle, to hit that rock bottom, because he's like, I'm unhappy and I don't know what to do with myself. And so the habit, the habitual behavior is to still turn to me and go, I'm unhappy, fix it. And I'm like, it's not my, you know, you need to find your own way forward. And so it is still a constant battle for us together to try and navigate that. And I think part of the issue that we're going through, and I'm not going to say, like, you know, that our marriage is happy on a daily basis by any means. It's a struggle a lot of the time still. And there are times that I think, oh, fuck this, I'd be so much easier. It'd be so much easier if I was on my own. But we've got that history there. And it's not that I don't not love my husband. So it's having that patience, and, you know, it's a combination of being patient with where he's at, but still being determined to keep moving forward myself. Because that, you know, that habit of making him happy, I'm still fighting with myself. I'm still fighting with myself.
Inclination.
Yeah.
You know, did you ever see the movie Jerry Maguire?
Yes.
Okay, so you and I are both, I'll be 51 next month, and you mentioned that you're 51. So I think that movie is such a bunch of bullshit, at least the one scene where he is crying and he's saying, you complete me. And I just think this is the reason why so many of us are in such a problem, because we've been taught that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And I just was having this conversation with someone the other day of, in a marriage, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 has to equal 3. And I say that by meaning you need to come in as Tanya, and Tanya is Tanya. She has her own interests, her own likes, her own loves, and her own desires in life. And the things that make her happy and the things that make her tick are important.
Yeah.
And then over here, you have your husband, same thing. And you have a right to have that individuality. And then together as a couple is the number 3, right? How do you not really complete each other, but how do you complement each other?
Yeah.
So you have this richness here, but you can easily have this richness here as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because you see this a lot, this codependency. And we hear this term a lot, this codependency of not being able to function without the other. Yeah. And really, marriage can be, and I don't want to use the word should per se, but it really could be, I bring my specialness to the table. I'm going to enjoy that. And so are you. And he brings or she brings that specialness to the table, and I'm going to enjoy that. And so will you. And then together we bring something to the table.
Yeah.
And so often you do see this in marriages where one spouse is on this personal growth trajectory. The other one is stagnant. And then this is where we end up. And either we have to drop back down a little bit and or they come up.
Yeah.
So we can kind of meet back in the middle.
Yeah.
One interesting question that was running through my head was, is your mother still with us? Is she still?
Yep.
Okay. So as you start to shift and say, I'm important too, it's not other than, it's not instead of, it's also, I'm important also. I'm deserving of the things that make me happy also.
Yeah.
How did your mom react to that? Because my guess is your mother did not prioritize herself in her marriage.
No, not at all. And in fact, my parents at the moment, I would describe them as their housemates. So my dad has, health issues. And so my mum feels responsible. Like, we've talked, I'm like my mum, I vividly remember, my mum crying in the bathroom because, dad was yelling and that sort of thing. I'm like, why the hell are you still here? Seriously, like I'm 18, my brother is 17. I've got nowhere else to go, was her response. I have nowhere else to go. And now,
is this self-esteem issue at that age? I mean, what would she have been, around 40?
Yeah.
Something around that age. Do you see that as a self-esteem issue of I can't do it on my own?
Yes, probably. I mean, like the whole dynamic back then was very different. So she didn't work full time. So there was that financial aspect as well. There was that financial security of being in that relationship where she had a roof over her head, there was money coming in. And if she was to go off on her own with no income and, that sort of thing, then there was that uncertainty there. So I think, I think it was more, I don't think she even contemplated it. And even now, like I know even now they still have that, like they haven't changed. That dynamic still hasn't changed.
I have a question for you because I do so much with intergenerational trauma. So would you say that your mother's parents had a similar relationship?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I mean, look, we do what we know.
Yeah.
We say, I'm done with that shit.
Yeah.
So you are the cycle breaker.
Yeah.
Are any of your siblings cycle breakers?
No, I've only got a younger brother, and I would say no. I would say they are definitely, the cycle is still there for them. I think my brother is definitely a lot more laid back than my father was. Like, I don't think he has inherited that same temper and that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't think he is a cycle breaker. And that was, it's interesting that you mentioned that because, the times that I faced a lot of resistance, that was the one thing that really kept me going was, I don't want my daughter to end up in the same situation that I am in. And I don't want my boys. I've got 3 kids. My 2 oldest boys, they're 21 and 20. And my daughter is 12. And the idea of her growing up and being in a relationship where she thought that suffer and sacrifice was the way it was supposed to be, and that she was going to be, have the responsibility for her children and her partner's happiness, like that was not something that I would even be prepared to comprehend. And on the other hand, I didn't want my boys to grow up, move out and have a girlfriend and go, fine, that's it. Like, my responsibility for myself is now over. It's now you need to look after me. You need to make me happy.
Do they understand the transition that you were going through and why it was so important for you to go through it?
I don't know. I've never actually had that conversation with them about that. They are definitely more open to the idea of personal development and following their own path and having their own dreams than I think they would have been if I had have just stayed in my lane, so to speak. My middle son is definitely more, into that sort of thing. He's more happy to try like meditation with me or yoga with me or, read a book I recommend. My eldest son, he's a bit more like my husband. It's like, no, this is the way things are going to be and this is the way I'm going to do them. And but he's got a strong girlfriend who pulls him up if he steps out of line, which is good.
So this segued really well for me because I was thinking, when each of us goes through these transitions, and we all go through transitions, every single person, that's what life is. It's a series of experiences designed for you to transition.
Yeah.
And people do it in different ways. Some people use therapists, some people use coaches, some people figure it out on their own. They read books, they get exposed to different methodologies. One question I had from you was, one of the things I like to do for the audience is share resources that were either a low cost or no cost to get you to where you were. I know you said you hired a coach, which is great. But not everybody can do that. And I know when I hit my rock bottom, at that time, I knew who the coach was for me, and I did not have the money to do that.
Yeah.
And I had 2 years before I could start working with that person. And in those 2 years, I dove deep into reading podcasts. I was doing these 21-day meditations with Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra. I was watching things on YouTube. It was either really no cost at all, or I was buying a book.
Yeah.
So in case someone's listening that wants to start, but is in that low cost, no cost range, what kind of things could you recommend as resources that helped you?
Yeah, I'm a bit the same as you. I'm an avid reader, so I read a lot of books. So I think it was Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life was one of the first ones I got. Journaling, I did, I sort of dabbled with that. So I did a lot of journaling and positive affirmations. I would stick them up on Post-it notes all around the house. You are worthy, you are, be brave and all that sort of stuff. But the thing that I think that I used the most was talking to myself. I am, all up in my head all the time. And I would talk to myself on a daily basis, a regular basis. Like if I was feeling like if I was out at the shopping mall and I wanted to buy something for myself, straight away I could feel my gut clench with guilt and like, how can I justify this? And I would talk to myself in my head and depending on who I was with, out loud, be like, hang on, just take a breath. You are worthy of this. You can afford this. It is okay. And one of the things I remember clearly, one of the things when I first started on my personal development journey, one of the things I really realized, which helped me, was being hyper aware of my emotional state at any point in time. And what I discovered was I was absolutely fucking furious all the time. I was ready to rip somebody's head off at any second of the day. I was just angry all the time. So, people would cut me off in traffic and I'd lose my shit. Like I would be really, I'd be so angry. How dare you? And I wouldn't hang out the window and do any road rage stuff, but I would seethe. I would be seething. And when I became aware of my emotional state, I would talk to myself. I'm like, all right, take a breath. Like, do you realize how angry you are now? Does that person in the car in front of you realize how angry you are now? No, they don't give two shits that you're angry. So of what benefit is this anger? It's of no benefit. It's of no benefit to you. They don't care. It's not like you're going to pull over and give them a mouthful. So you need to just breathe through that. You need to breathe through it and you need to let it go because they do not care. What you're doing is you are poisoning yourself.
Did you ever explore where the anger was coming from?
For me, it was definitely, it was all tied in with that feeling of being trapped, that feeling of resentment, that feeling of I am worth more than this. I want more than this and I can't have it. Like I don't feel like I can have it.
Yeah. In your mind at that moment, you didn't think you could have it. When you're talking to yourself, and I'll use the example that you used in the mall with the clothing. What I was thinking when you were saying that was, really, who were you talking to? Were you talking to your late 40-year-old self, or were you talking to like your 6-year-old self? Because it was really the younger self that learned all these behaviors to begin with. And it's the 6-year-old self, or however young you may have been when you adopted those agreements, that you're not worthy of having these things and you should not be doing these things for yourself because that would be perceived as selfish. So when you're having those conversations, it probably looks like and feels like you're having that conversation with your adult self. But is it possible you were really dialoguing with your inner child?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because that was one of the sparks that would set off the powder keg at home when I was a kid was money and not having enough of it. So that was definitely like, if the arguments started, that was definitely one of the ones that blew up the worst was the money. Because my mum didn't work a lot. I mean, she worked on and off when I was at school and that sort of thing, but she didn't have a full-time job like, most women in relationships, they have a full-time job now. So that was definitely an issue. And I can clearly remember as a family, the 4 of us, we were going away on a camping trip and we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, packed the car and we're getting ready to go. And my dad said to my mum, do you have the money to pay for the camping fees? And mum pulled out the money and she was 2 cents short. And that was the end of it. My dad lost it, absolutely lost it, yelling, swearing, everyone get back to bed. We're not going. For 2 cents.
Yeah.
So, yes, the financial aspect is also, definitely I would have been talking to myself when I was a child saying, it's you've earned this money. Like you contribute to the finances. It is okay. You deserve it. So, yes, I would definitely have been speaking to my child, my inner child.
And I think people need to understand that. And this is why, at least, and I want to talk about your coaching practice, but on my website, I actually have a part that says get started step 1. And I talk about childhood development experiences, adverse experiences, and basically say, if you don't think the reason why you're stuck doesn't have to do with then, we probably don't need to work together. Because it actually always does come back, because the reality is our core beliefs are developed before we're 8 years old.
Yeah.
And your core beliefs are likely what have you stuck. They're self-limiting. Once you can unravel the core belief, in your case, it was women should just serve and men should always be taken care of, even if it means at the sacrifice of myself. It was watched, it was learned, and it was adopted as an agreement that you accepted.
Yeah.
Right? So whatever the core belief is that's running point, that's making decisions in your life, when you're that angry about how life is going, it's really important to stop and look and say, what part of that am I bringing to the table? You're not doing it consciously.
No, that's right.
Right? It's completely subconscious. So I love the fact that we could discuss this and really recognize that it wasn't the adult self that you were talking to. And it's probably not the adult that was pissed in traffic either.
No, probably not.
So you're an accountability and self-empowerment mama coach.
Yep.
I'm going to read this out. You're a life coach for working moms. who struggle to make time for themselves. You support them to create space in their busy lives to do things they love without the mom guilt and still be present. So how do you do that? Tell us about your coaching practice. Tell us how people can find you.
So, yeah, I mean, like the reason why I got into coaching was to help people to raise that awareness with other mums that the way that they were existing, the way that I was existing, doesn't need to be the way it is. And so with my clients, it's raising that awareness of it's not a choice between yourself and your family. It is trying to find your own unique balance to do both.
Right. It's not either or, it's and.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, and it's being able to help them understand how they got, like similar to what we've been talking about, how they got into this situation, like the patterns and the habits and the unconscious agreements that they have with their family members that has created the lifestyle that they currently experience, and helping them through, because I mean, we're so busy, like us as mums, the overwhelm on a day-to-day basis is very real. And so it's they're helping them, supporting them to find strategies that work for them and their family. It's not like a cookie cutter kind of solution. Each mum, each woman has, their own needs and beliefs and styles that we work for. So it's about them, like we talked about, rediscovering who they are and what it is they truly want to do. Because a lot of time, they say, like, I'm unhappy, I want more, I don't know what that more looks like anymore. So it's sort of helping them to have another look at their values. What are their true core values, and how much of those, on a scale of 1 to 10, if integrity is one of your highest values, which that's mine, on a scale of 1 to 10, like how much are you living with integrity in your day-to-day life? And I could say, 10 years ago that it would be on a 2. I wasn't doing the right thing by me. I was doing the right thing by everybody else, but not by myself. And so it's...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go.
I was just going to say, what do people come to you most with? What would be a common reason for someone coming to work with you?
They are... the resentment piece really speaks to a lot of people. Like when they connect with feeling that resentment themselves and not wanting to be in that space anymore. The overwhelm, I think, is they're feeling overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis, and also there's that little nagging voice in the back of their head. There has got to be more to life than this. There has got to be more. Like, this can't be all it is. They're kind of living in a Groundhog Day existence, and there has got to be more. They just want more. They just don't know how to make that happen. So
if people are listening to this, even if you're in Australia, I'm assuming that you have clients all over or have the capability for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Zoom these days. Do you have anything special that you like to offer people that are just curious or interested about working with you?
Yeah, like at the moment, I'm more than happy to hop on a Zoom for like 30 minutes. Let's have a free chat. Like, it's not going to cost you anything. Let's have a free chat. Let's talk about where you're at, like who it is you really are. How do we find that out? How do we work out what that more is that you want? So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and let's just, all we need is that first step. We just need, in some, like, I know for myself, when I was like hitting rock bottom, you sort of look to where you want to be, and it seems like an impossible journey. It's an impossible trip. Like, it's a huge gap that you need to leap. And all we really need is that one first step.
Yeah. And so how would they find you? What's the best way for somebody to find you if they want to take that first step?
my website is tanyamariecoaching.com. So you can definitely hop on there and find out a bit more about me. And I'm on Instagram as Tanya Marie Coaching as well. So, and I post on there regularly. Every couple of days I'm on Instagram. That's probably my favorite platform.
Awesome. And I'm just going to spell it out for people so people can find it. It's Tanya, which is Tanya, and Marie is Maree. So her website is Tanya Marie Coaching, and she goes by that handle, Tanya Marie Coaching, on her Instagram. So you mentioned Louise Hayes. Can you think of 3 other books that really transformed your life? So if someone's listening today, they can hop on wherever they love to buy books and grab those 3 books today.
One of my favorite authors is Don Miguel Ruiz. So The 4 Agreements I really loved. What else did I read? The Universe Has Your Back. The Way of Ping, Ping, by Stuart Avery Gold. Okay. And I've read that a few times, but that's the second book. The first book is just called Ping, and it was absolutely brilliant. So so they're the books that I would recommend.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. I know for sure your story is going to resonate. I can think of a handful of clients I have right now that I know this is their story. And I think it's a really common one. So knowing that, I'm hoping if someone listens to this that doesn't think it's common, that you're going to start to realize that you are actually one of many, not one of a few, and you're not alone. And if Tanya's story speaks to you, contact her. She's lovely. She has a beautiful perspective. She's come from the ground up. She's learned the gifts and the challenge. She's found the purpose in the pain. So thank you so much for being our guest today. And again, if you want to get in touch with Tanya, it's TanyaMarieCoaching.com. Thanks, everyone.